June 13th, 2024 Board of Education meeting to order. Mr. Anagnostou, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Ms. Kilbane?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Ms. Stachek?
Here.
Mrs. Hausum?
Here.
We are all present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is our reminder of our strategic priorities. Our district has developed and is currently engaged in a 3-year strategic plan, which reflects the values, beliefs, and hopes of our students, staff, parents, and community. Our 4 strategic priorities to the plan are transforming teaching and learning, aligning staff and resources, cultivating culture and climate, and leveraging funding and facilities. And everything we do and all the decisions we make as a board goes through that lens. Next are recognitions. Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. It's always an exciting time. We have a number of recognitions for a variety of individuals tonight. So we're going to start off with our middle school wrestling state meet qualifiers, and I will turn it over to our head coach to come up to the podium and introduce our students. Our head coaches.
So this group of hard-working young men came to practice every day with the intent to improve their craft, and it was very obvious that their dedication paid off because they made it to the state tournament. Throughout the season, they exemplified what it meant to be a model Mustang, and I think the perfect word to describe this group is resilience, because they, every day, no matter what, they were able to, put their personal issues or academic issues aside and come to practice ready to work. We're going to talk about each one individually. The first one I'm going to talk about is Reed Arison. Should we have him come up? Yeah, come on up here, Reed. So, Reed was a little undersized for his weight class, but he never let that stop him because he continued to come to practice every day to work hard. He was one of the few wrestlers that came to off-season workouts, and I don't think he missed a single one. So despite his size, he was still able to compete, made it to the state tournament, and as long as he continues going, I'm excited to see what he'll do in the future. The next one I'm going to talk about is Nick Caracellia. He wasn't able to make it today. But I've had the pleasure of coaching Nick the last 2 seasons, and his involvement in the program helped the entire program grow. He always asked questions, provided feedback, and even gave suggestions about practice plans if he felt he wanted to. He's a natural-born leader that others gravitated towards, and his teammates looked to him for guidance if they ever needed it. And that's why he was a captain for the last 2 years. I'm very excited to see what he does in the high school program, but he's going to be missed by his middle school teammates and coaches for sure. Next one is Joseph Greco, which I don't think he was able to make it either. But last season, we were really upset when Joey decided to quit wrestling and decide to play basketball. But he did roll back around, and he made it out for the season this year. But he didn't let that gap year stop him. He continued to work hard throughout the season, and he was very coachable throughout it. And so he was able to touch up on some of his bad habits and even learn some new things that he was able to use at the state tournament. And as long as he continues to work hard this offseason, I'm positive he'll accomplish whatever wrestling goal he puts ahead of him next year. The last one I'm going to talk about is Wyatt Harhay. Since last season, Wyatt has grown as a person and as a wrestler. He developed some accountability and made it to, like Reed, every off-season practice that he was able to. He perfected a double leg and was able to take down almost everybody he wrestled with it, and that's why he was able to be so successful this season. And as long as he continues working hard, I'm excited to see what he'll do in high school as well. You wanna talk about the rest?
All right, passing it over. I got 4 athletes. Keep it short here and sweet. James Potts, who's not here, but I've had the pleasure to coach him since kindergarten. Phenomenal wrestler. To watch him grow and his mentality change this year as an 8th grader, I thought that was the most impressive. Has had the talent, but when you start to see, as kids grow in the middle school and start to see the mentality change a little bit, he was able to take it to another level. So congrats to James. Next one, I know he's here, my silent assassin, Henry Smith, come on up. Henry, I will say, I don't know who's a bigger fan of wrestling. His dad, who is an alumni of Strongsville, wrestled at Strongsville. Henry loves the game, but I think his mom's the biggest wrestling person around here. But I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in the high school from a wrestling aspect. He goes from practice, he goes to club practice for wrestling. He wrestles in the summer, he wrestles in the winter, he is year-round, and you can really see his craft. Like, I guarantee you this is not only middle school state qualifier, you're going to see it at the high school at some point, whether that's freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, as many as he wants, you will see his name again. So congrats, Henry. Next one, Dane Albert, come on up. Again, a guy that I've been able to coach for years. Come on, Gimp. But when you look at an athlete, right, like sometimes you got one sport, 2 sport, to excel in all sports. I mean, he's a phenomenal football player, which I now get to coach him at the high school. He's been a great wrestler, had a lot of success this year. He's also a great baseball player. So when you see next year, you know, hopefully he continues to do all 3. When you talk about a 3-sport athlete, how hard it is not only to do one nowadays, but to excel. He really does excel in all 3. And I think that comes from the push that he has above him, but also just the mindset of how great he wants to be, and he will be as good as his mind lets him take him. So congrats to Dane. And I don't like talk about my own kid, but come on up, Austin. It's fine. I think, as short as I'll make it, but I think when you are the son of a coach, I think that's probably one of the hardest spots to be, trying to be in the spotlight and do the right things, and trying not myself coach him as hard, but as Sebastian has said, I mean, to come in as a 7th grader, 4 captains were all voted by teammates, not coaches, and to be one of the only 7th graders as a captain, right, I think says a lot just for who he is as a person, because that is not my vote, that's not Sebastian's votes, that's these guys' votes. So we look forward to 8th grade next year, being the leader and, moving this thing in the right direction as Strongsville Wrestling has taken off in the last couple of years. So congrats to everybody, and congrats to Strongsville Wrestling.
Austin, we're proud of you. Proud of you.
I know.
We're very proud of you. Congratulations. Young man, we're proud of you. Coach, proud of you. Coach? Very, no,
Yeah, I didn't
Very
know
proud of you.
either. I was like, I almost did. I had it, right?
Congratulations. Good job. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sorry, you almost broke your other finger.
I didn't read.
That was like a secret handshake.
So congratulations, coaches, and to all of our student athletes that were here or couldn't make it tonight on a phenomenal season. And what a great accomplishment to make it to the state meet. That says a lot about where the program is and where our student athletes are, and we look forward to seeing it grow at the middle school level and continue to get better at the high school level as well. So congratulations to everybody. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and Susan, are you going up to help too? Katie and Susan, great leaders from our PTA council and PTA units, are here to recognize some of our PTA accomplishments over the past year.
Hi, I'm Katie Hollabarger. I have the pleasure of serving as the president of the council PTA for the district this past year. And I'm here to present the Helping Hands Award and the TNPTA Award. What happens in our districts, we have 9 PTA units, and each unit will submit a nominee for each of these awards, and we have a committee who will read them anonymously, and they will select a winner for the district. The Helping Hands Award is someone who is not an educator, but someone who still is a staff member working in the schools that is instrumental in the PTA mission and helping the PTAs throughout the year. And then the TNPTA is a little bit more obvious. It's an educator in the schools that has made a significant impact on the lives of the children in their classroom, in their school, and also supports the PTA mission. So Susan is going to help me present the first award.
The first one we have is our Helping Hands Award, and this is for Mr. Nick Kelly, if he'd like to come up and be recognized one more time. I'm so excited to honor Nick again in front of this group because he deserves to be seen, by everybody in the district. So Mr. Nick Kelly is part of the Strongsville Middle School team that helps keep the school clean and safe for the students and staff and community. He leads the second shift custodians and has been with our district for 10 years. Nick, we think, is the best person we could ask for help with all of our PTA ceremonies and dances. He encourages us to text him for a personal greeting at the side door with a cart to efficiently get us in the building and ready for action. He never, ever acts bothered by any of our requests and often has offered something extra or is already beginning a task before we think to ask. For instance, I first got to know him when I did the first ornament night at the middle school, and Nick already had some holiday tunes queued up to play for us over the speakers before we'd ever even thought of it. So specifically, though, this year, Nick showed the utmost composure, compassion, and flexibility in September of 2023 when we planned a glow dance. And now we were very surprised when we turned off the lights and nothing glowed because the district had invested money in security and safety lights that automatically turned on. So none of our glowing lights were actually going to work for our dance. Amidst heightened emotions and limited time, and probably a few very strong stares from me that he read well, he would not give up to solve this problem. Without even actually telling us while we kind of were figuring out alternatives, he went to work calling the building manager after hours and the installation company to lead him on a complicated hunt for switches and wires through the whole building for 45 minutes. I did find out later that he was darn near close to getting electrocuted too, which I don't think he shares likely, but was true. And then suddenly, all of the unwinded lights switched off, and 400 SMS students were glowing immediately with squeals of excitement. The dance really got going, and the volunteers and planners, myself included, nearly cried with gratitude. So just a little, tidbit of how much he cares about, his role. He wasn't going to just say no. Everyone who interacts with Nick Kelly leaves knowing that he's qualified, kind, and more than willing. He says, if I can do one thing to make their day better, that makes it all worthwhile. And he does show that every day. Students, staff, and visitors from the community are lucky to have Nick overseeing the venue and planning for their safety and comfort. Nick's pride in his work is a great example for all of us, and I'm super happy to recognize him. Congratulations.
And then next up, we'll welcome Mrs. Kim Weirs. Mrs. Weirs is an educator at Kinsner Elementary School and also a PTA liaison. A lot of things were submitted about her, and I'll read off a few of them. She is a quiet force for social and emotional change and proactivity. She leads by example and does not look for accolades or recognition. Kim takes her experiences with what all people need to feel connected, empowered, and cared for to create a culture within her classroom that's supportive and reflective of each child. She uses her skills to move beyond simple classroom management and restorative practices to create a sense of community. She builds relationships with students and is proactive in creating a classroom that functions as a family despite varying abilities. Kim makes everyone around her feel important and is exceptionally clear about intentions with great results. She comes across very reasonable, capable, committed, and caring. Kinsner improved when Kim came on board. She embeds learning of executive functioning skills into her classroom so students build studying habits that promote life skills rather than memorization. Instead of posting notes for copying, she teaches students how to take meaningful notes, utilizes study skills, multisensory learning with music and movement, and makes learning engaging. She's approachable, gracious, caring, and while seemingly never too busy for parents and students. She will never be the loudest or most flashy in the building, but behind the scenes, she is quietly caring for our children, helping them thrive, and using a sense of humor, empathy, and passion for education to make her corner of the world where the whole child is seen, valued, and educated. Congratulations, Kim. If you would like to, sure.
I'm really nervous. It's much easier with fourth graders. Well, thank you. Hearing that, like, this makes my job, what I do, worth it. In our world, there's so much going on. You know, we have so many things like demands curriculum-wise with the state. And so hearing this to me is the most important. And one of my colleagues and I, we always say it's how we make the kids feel. And that just makes my job and keeps me going. But I want to say thank you to PTA because it is such a partnership. The PTA does so much in our building. So the support of parents and teachers together, I feel like I can't do this myself. So thank you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.
Well, congratulations again to Kim and Nick, extremely well-deserving, and what a beautiful testament to their work and leadership and guidance and support they give for our district. So congratulations again. We're going to keep it going with PTA to recognize and present the volunteer hours for this past school year.
Good evening to the school board, Dr. Iba and Mrs. Pelko. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. It's my privilege to serve as a PTA representative, and I'm here on behalf of the council, but all of the 9 PTA units that serve the children, the schools, and the parents of our district. During this past year, PTAs in Strongsville have been able to provide what I would call an extraordinary amount of support. It just felt like a year where every building was just hitting on all cylinders with PTA involvement and creating new activities, keeping going legacy activities. Some of those include book fairs, carnivals, preschool prom, family movie nights, bingo, ice skating, math and science programs, after prom. The list just like goes on and on and on. And as I was getting like the hours submitted from each of the units for what they put in, I was just like flabbergasted because it's like having almost like a full-time staff of people at each of these buildings, helping the students really excel and helping the teachers provide these enrichment programs. In addition to that, we provided tens of thousands of dollars in grants through each of the PTA units to teachers and to the school, improving gym and playground equipment, and organizing many different staff appreciation events. At the council level specifically, we contributed, we continue to host our SMS Rocks Dance, which was a huge success this year, which helped us provide $8,000 worth of donations to each of the different units to provide activities or items to their schools. We also were able to award $5,000 for senior scholarships. In February, we celebrated our annual Founders Day program, recognizing 10 individuals that go above and beyond for the betterment of the students in the school district. This year, I'm happy to report that with all of these combined efforts, resulted in 16,541 hours of volunteer time given by our PTA units for the benefit of the students, the staff, and the schools. So thank you to the school board, thank you to school administration for giving us the opportunity to be in the school, to work with the kids and work with the teachers to help enrich the educational experience. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of the board and all of our district, thank you, Katie, to you and all of the PTA members and leaders for the work that you did. Like you said, it's been a phenomenal year. I mean, I was asked this year for one PTA function, how do we get school buses to drive parents back and forth because there were 1,000 people coming to an event? So, I mean, just a tremendous amount of effort and time and energy, and we couldn't be the district we want to be for our kids and our families without your support. So on behalf of all of us, thank you. And our final recognition of the night is for our Treasurers Department. And we're blessed to have a phenomenal treasurer, George Anagnostou, and Assistant Treasurer, Nick Mancini, and the entire staff. And because of their leadership and the collective work of the department, we're blessed to get these recognitions every year to honor the work that they do each and every day. So, George, I'll let you add anything if you would like to before we bring Jennifer up.
No, I would just like to say thank you to Jen in the auditor's office for the recognition, and I'll say whatever I have to say after Jen does her presentation. But no, it's a team. What I like that it's a team effort. It's just not one of us. It's the entire district working together in a collaborative process.
So Jen, come on up.
So I am Jen. I'm a regional liaison from the State Auditor's Office, and I have in my hand a Auditor of State Award with Distinction. The Auditor of State audits about 6,000 entities every year, and only about 4% of entities receive this award. So it's a real testament to George Anagnostou. It's such a fun last name to say. And his team. So you should be proud of this award. The Auditor of State, they audit local governments and school districts, and upon completion of that audit is when they determine that it's a clean audit. So congratulations to George and his team on receiving this award. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you again, Jen, and the Auditor Faber in his office for the recognition of the Auditor States Award with Distinction. This past year marks the 5th consecutive year that the district has received this prestigious award. And as a district, this is an award we strive for as it represents excellence in financial reporting and a commitment to efficient, effective, and transparent services. As I mentioned earlier, it's just not me, and it's an entire staff, Treasurer's Office. We'd like to recognize my staff that are here tonight, Assistant Treasurer Nick Mancini, Administrative Assistant Melissa LePage, and those who cannot be here tonight are Payroll and Benefits Coordinator Lauren Usick, our Payroll Inventory Clerk Joan Cahuth, and Accounts Payable Judy Jerkago and Michelle Konachensky, and also recognize a couple retired folks that were here during the audit period as well under this year, Don Evangelista and Ruth Ann Franzik, and also like to thank Dr. Riva and Jenny Pelko for their leadership throughout the district. And additionally, as I said, this is not just me and my department, it's an entire district working together in the confines that we have to follow the guidelines and make sure we're providing the best services for the tax dollars that were granted. So thanks again, and hopefully next year we'll be back for number 6. So.
I wanted to take a moment to congratulate everyone I think a couple of shout outs. I think it's fun when you realize that we have coaches that are committed to our district and have seen athletes grow from kindergarten to 8th grade. It shows commitment for the student athletes, but also for the coaches, and that consistency is important. Council PTA, the Founders Day we talked about, it's one of my favorite events because it recognizes all the good things that are being done in the district, and it recognizes all the different ways good things are being done in the district. And then lastly, kudos and congratulations to George and his team. It is an honor, it is an award, it is earned, and it is earned by good, diligent effort every day, not just by George and his team, but by everyone in the district. And it's, although it says award with distinction, it is our standard. And George says it with a little bit of humor, but it's also our goal that we will achieve and earn that award again next year. So congratulations to everyone, and thank you very much. If anyone has homework or a really nice summer day and wants to escape, now would be the time to do that. Our meetings are open to the public, and you're welcome to stay.
Oh, geez, they're all weavers.
Rich.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Next on our agenda is public comment. I do not have any slips. Is there anybody who wants to address the board? Hearing none. We do have a request to go out of order. Dr. Ryba?
Yeah, so we're excited tonight. We have 3 administrative recommendations for your consideration. And so, just so they can enjoy the beautiful summer night as well, I'm going to ask Jenny to recognize and introduce our recommendations to you now.
Yeah, so our first, I want to say nominee, but that's not right. I want to have Sierra Gaspar come up to the podium here. Earlier in the year, the board approved the new position of a preschool principal. So Sierra is our candidate that we'll be recommending to you this evening. And she is currently an assistant principal at Parma Community School, where she works with students in grades K through 3. She comes with experience in PBIS, MTSS, curriculum, and instruction, and really prides herself on building a really strong culture of belonging and community, which I think is so very needed at our preschool level. So I just want to congratulate Ciara throughout the process. You excelled throughout every step of the way, and by far were the #1 recommended candidate. So congratulations, and I'll let you say a few words.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I am Sierra Gaspar, actually soon to be next month Sierra Vanderhoff, so that will take some getting used to. But yes, I'm very excited and really grateful and humbled for this opportunity to join Strongsville. Really excited to meet the staff and the students and the families, and really looking forward to getting to know all of you and partner together for the success of our students. So thank you again for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next, I'm going to ask Ms. Lauren Skoda to come up to the podium. So Lauren may be a familiar face, but again, she left us for 1 year.
I did.
But now she's back. So we're thrilled to have you back in the district. And I think about a week and a half ago, maybe we met together, and we just had, I thought, was a great conversation about the future of Strongsville and all of the wonderful things that we can partner together in terms of teaching and learning, and all of the wonderful things that Lauren will bring as our gifted coordinator, not only at the elementary level, but also looking at the middle and high school level as well. Things like project-based learning we talked about more STEM activities, we talked about partnering with just deeper learning experiences and better experiences for our students. So Lauren comes with a wealth of ideas, and we're thrilled to welcome her back to Strongsville as our gifted coordinator.
Thank you. Well, you stole everything I was going to say, but, so hi everyone, Lauren Scotta, soon to be Mrs. Dowdell as well, so we got that going. So I'm back, and I'm very excited to be back. As Jenny mentioned, I took a year away. I worked for BW as the Director of Community STEM Initiatives, and I currently work at NASA as an educator intern for the summer, so lots of great experiences working with STEM curriculum and STEAM curriculum and project-based learning and doing a lot of professional development, not only with K through 12th grade, but higher education, which I think is really a nice benefit that we can look at to see how we're preparing our students for higher education and career readiness. So I am just thrilled to be able to come back to Strongsville and work with our gifted learners and beyond, and I'm very excited. So thank you all very much for this opportunity. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you. Welcome back.
And finally, I'd like to call up Ms. Tara Thomas to the podium. Tara, yes, clap for Tara. So Tara is going to serve as our new 6th grade middle school principal. She'll be replacing Tina Peters, who's retiring. Tara is currently an assistant principal and an assistant athletic director at Keystone Middle School. She has also taught both science and social studies at the middle school level, but is also licensed in 4 to 6 math and ELA. So she comes with a wealth of experience of instructional knowledge for our middle school. She has experience with curriculum development, universal design for learning, technology integration, along with behavior management and PBIS, all of which our middle school needs. So we're thrilled to welcome you as our next assistant principal for the middle school, Tara.
Thank you. So I am Tara Thomas, and I am so incredibly humbled and excited to be able to serve the young people of Strongsville. Middle school is absolutely the world's greatest time period ever in the history of ever. Middle schoolers may not think that. I think it though, so I am so excited to be able to be a part of their journey, and just, I don't know, I cannot wait to get started. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Congratulations.
My mom taught middle school for 40-some years and never said that. So. You are a superhero.
So once again, I know the board's going to take official action here in a little bit, but blessed to have Lauren back in the district, and to Tara and Sierra, we're thrilled to have you as a part of the team and know that you're going to do great things for our kids and our community, so welcome. And now this is where you guys can leave too, if you'd like to leave. And then there were 3. Oh, 4. Melissa, I didn't see you back there.
But she has to be.
She has to be,
Yeah,
that's true.
she's stuck.
So, in the spirit of taking things out of order, since we do have some people here, why don't we do the athletic boosters, the presentation, and then, or the boosters sponsorship agreement discussion, and then we'll come back to our levy discussion.
We also have the approval of minutes if you want to do that real quick.
Okay, section D1, approval of minutes. This is on the consent calendar. Motion to approve Board of Education meeting minutes. All district video and audio recordings are permanent part of the minutes from our May 23rd, 2024 meeting. Now we can go to, do we have a preference?
Doesn't matter.
Why don't we do the athletic department presentation quarterly update first?
All right, I would like to call Denny Ziegler up to the podium to do the quarterly update that we've been doing throughout the year with a focus on the spring update.
All right, thank you, everybody, for allowing me to share some spring updates with you. Spring was spring's always very challenging just because of the weather. Never know what you're going to get, how many games you're actually going to end up playing. I think this is the third or fourth straight year where we had to cancel our elite track meet. But in spite of all that, I've really felt like this spring we had a lot of success, not only from a high school perspective, but from a middle school perspective and a club perspective. So, starting with this slide, this just shows overall the revenues for fall, winter, and spring. Nothing really changed, obviously, with the fall and the winter ones that we shared with you previously. The only revenues from a high school's perspective is at the bottom with boys volleyball, boys lacrosse, and girls lacrosse. And obviously, boys volleyball, the budget was actually created before we allowed boys volleyball to become a sport here. So obviously, any revenue that we generated was above what we already budgeted. And they had a very, very successful first year. From the boys and girls lacrosse perspective, we did a lot of things different with those teams, meaning we had a lot more events around games. We did a lot more double headers between girls and boys lacrosse. So some of the revenue that we generated was based off of scheduling ideas, and then also a lot of community engagement pieces that we could bring in from our youth days to our teacher appreciation night that we had for, our boys and girls lacrosse teams. And then obviously the success that they've had recently, especially our girls team, who got, they were ranked in the top 10 in the state most of the season. So all that culminated into a lot more revenue generation for those programs. The revenue follow-up, this isn't anything different than what we've seen previously, just besides the boys volleyball and the lacrosse, since those are the only sports that we technically charge for in the spring. A lot of the revenue generated is strictly tickets-based. So when you factor in all those and not having track and boys tennis and baseball, softball counting in.
Denny, before you move
Yeah.
on, I just wanted to point out one thing. When this time last year when we were talking about the increase for the athletic budget, we had budgeted a transfer from the general fund of $144,840 with the increased ticket revenue that Denny was mentioning, minus any additional costs that were slightly more for officials. We were able to reduce that transfer by $26,000. So we're anticipating the transfer to be around $118,000. So with the additional ticket sales, they were able to lower that amount that was needed. So I just wanted to highlight that point.
And I do think, piggybacking off that, some things that we have planned with not only spring sports next year, but with our fall sports as well as winter sports. I'm really hoping that the revenue numbers continue to rise for us. When you look at the high school expenses, obviously, everyone was pretty much in the black. Baseball, you'll be surprised at how much baseballs actually cost. I think it's like $97 per dozen baseballs. So when you need 2 or 3 baseballs per game plus practice baseballs, those numbers really add up. And then boys volleyball, Obviously, since it wasn't recognized as a sport, we didn't know what to expect with our budget. But with the increase of uniforms, volleyballs, and then some game workers that we had with the officials added on to that, is why that's red. And then obviously, I won't touch on the wrestling, but our girls basketball, because we touched on that back in the winter. But obviously, with less games, less home games, that expense was a little bit higher than what our revenues were. We already touched on the new stuff from winter, so I'll just focus on the bottom here. Some things we had to look at for the spring is football helmets. Obviously, we never know how or the size range of our athletes coming in. So some of those football helmets that we had to order are mostly mediums and smalls. So to accommodate that need for our younger athletes coming up. With the addition of boys volleyball and a lot of other rise in costs, the athletic training supplies expenses went up a little bit. Still under budget, but as I talked to the athletic trainers, what we're starting to see is the cost of tape is now starting to come down a little bit more. So I would anticipate that cost is going to go down for us. The reconditioning cost, that's a yearly thing. Our cheer uniforms, I think we had to order 4 or 5 new cheer uniforms this year that we placed. We're hoping that they're here in time for football season. And then we are working on a volleyball net storage. And then we did get a wrestling UV cleaner, which is going to help to keep our mats cleaner. And basically what it is it's a roller that you roll across the mats that sanitizes and keeps them safe for our athletes moving forward. Some high school successes along with our budget. Our boys and girls lacrosse teams got their brand new uniforms. Our baseball team won its first GCC championship in 9 years. Our softball team had brand new uniforms. And then our girls track athletes, we had a relay team that placed 5th, and we had a individual that placed 4th. And we had a state qualifier in our hurdles. So lots of success going on for our high school programs this year. And just to recap, you'll see kind of where we have been and where we're at now. This is just taking into account the GCC standings. So obviously baseball, softball made a jump. Boys and girls lacrosse did the same. Girls track and field made a jump. Boys track and field made a jump. Boys volleyball, this is the first year, so we'll see where we go from there. And then I will say probably the most impressive thing that we've been able to do with our spring sports is with our boys tennis program. We went from about 20 athletes, we're now above 40. So that program has really taken off, which allows us to have more contests with a JV and a JVB team along with our varsity athletes. Our middle school follow-up, the only revenue that we saw coming in for the middle school was our track, since our softball team's a club. And really what that track revenue was we had a lot more people attend our elite meet. The weather was awesome. And that is really starting to take off as we have more schools that are wanting to be part of that meet now every year. The expenses for middle school, there's really not, track and field is really the only one that we had during the spring. They were under budget. What we try to do sometimes is to bring the middle school athletes over to the high school to run on our tracks to utilize some of our stuff. But they still utilize some of the things down at the middle school. But the cost to run things down there is not as much as, let's say, a high school meet. And we utilize our high school staff to run that meet for the middle schools, which also helps. So our middle school new cost, really for the spring, was football jerseys, track hurdles, basketball carts, football helmet racks, and additional shoulder pads. And then for 24-25, cheer uniforms, athlete incentives, 22 football helmets, coach jackets, and some more track hurdles is what we are anticipating down there. Some team success from our middle school. I know softball was a big hit down there. So you'll see in the next couple of slides, our track numbers went down, but we think it's because more of the female athletes went out for club softball. So I don't think it's really nothing major going on there, just that the opportunity to do something different was more appealing to some of our other athletes down there. So our spring recap for the middle school girls track, 6-0, GCC champs. Boys track 5-1, GCC runners-up, 1 state qualifier. Our girls actually had 8 state qualifiers, and our club softball was GCC runner-up, a 5-6 record with 18 students participating in that. As you can see there with the intramural programs, pickleball, boys volleyball, runners club, as well as badminton, all those numbers can get better, especially with boys volleyball, as we're trying to grow that sport now from a middle school perspective on up to the high school. Where the money was spent for additional for the spring with our participation numbers, as you can see, overall, from a high school perspective, throughout the whole spring, we had a positive change of 23 athletes participating. Middle school dropped 12, and then the high school as well as middle school combined for the spring was a total positive change of 11. And as I stated, the track and field numbers at the middle school, if you look at it, was 221 to 191, a difference of that 30, but 18 of those went over to softball, to club softball. I won't go through winter and fall because we already went through that. And then this is just high school only, this is high school, middle school, total participation number for winter, spring, or fall, winter, and spring. Total in 2022, the high school had over 1,000 students participating in some sort of athletics. Our middle school had 620, and total that is 1,642, which is almost a 10% increase. And then from the year that we took from 2017 through 23-24, it's almost a 24% increase in our students participating in athletics here. So as we continue to build and want to provide those championship level experiences for our athletes, we think we're on the right track. Still some work to do, but we're definitely getting to where we are getting more students wanting to do things for our sports teams. Thank you very much, unless you have any other questions.
Anyone have any questions?
I don't have a question. I wanted to thank you for the creativity throughout the spring season. I enjoyed seeing the teacher appreciation night at La Crosse. I looked at all the pictures, and that was a fun way to get more people involved. So thanks for being creative.
Sure, yeah, we have a lot more things planned for the fall, especially with football season now that Coach Struznik came on there. I mean, every game's gonna be some sort of adventure for us, which is gonna be awesome. So.
I do have one question. I'm sure we talked about this at some point, but I don't remember exactly. I was up at Fultz Fields the other day with boys baseball, and there were some middle school students there saying, like, how come we have softball but not baseball at the middle school? Can you speak to that?
The only thing I know of is, I don't think there's any middle school baseball teams locally to play.
Okay.
Now, what could happen is we could look at it from a club perspective, and they could play travel teams, but if we go that route as a club, I don't know how many would leave their travel teams to play for Strongsville. But I don't know the number of actual schools that have a club baseball program at, the middle school level. So, but I can definitely look at it and see what that number is.
Thank you.
The, as far as the budget is concerned, anything that, we did such a good job planning the budget. trying to predict, anything that you foresee that we did not predict that
The
would
only
come up
thing
as a
that
surprise?
Yeah, the only thing that I know that is coming up at the end of next fiscal year is our BSN contract. So that's something that we will have to look and see if we want to stick with Under Armour, or go with another, I guess, company vendor, whatever you want to call it. There are some other companies out there that offer more, so that's worth something, but on the flip side of that, that means all new teams have to get brand-new uniforms again. So looking at both angles that way, that's a major one that's going to be coming up.
And end of next school year or next calendar year?
June of 2025. Mhm. Other than that, I don't foresee any major budget items coming up that I can think of off the top of my head, no.
Denny, if there was a change of brand, would it be all new uniforms in 1 year, or would there be a grace period?
They would give you a 5-year period to get all of the varsity teams into that new brand, yes. Yeah.
And then as-
Which we would be on our uniform rotation anyways, so I don't think that would be a major concern. It's just of what the cost of those new uniforms would be versus what we're paying now with the Under Armour.
And then as far as participation is concerned, do you have a goal?
I don't have a total number, no. I would like to see our multi-sport athletes numbers increase to almost 50%, if I could. I don't think we're even close to 30 or 35% right now. But I do think that a lot of our coaches that we have in place now are definitely gonna collaborate to, really push a lot of our athletes to do multi-sport athletes, or to do multi-sports.
If you could provide us with the number, I'd be interested in it.
Sure, okay.
What the current number is so that we know what the goal is.
Sure. Mhm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Denny.
Thanks.
And that's the only item I had under my section, so if there's no other questions, here's my report.
Great report, George. And an award? What a great meeting for a treasurer. So moving back to our athletic boosters discussion, and we have Coach Trusnick here if we need to lean on anyone, but I kind of wanted to just start the discussion. The athletic boosters have come to the board with a request, and the reason this requires board discussion is twofold. I don't want to say it's out of the ordinary for school districts, it's out of the ordinary for us. Normally, these kinds of sponsorship opportunities are negotiated by the superintendent on behalf of the board directly with whoever is doing the sponsoring. So we've had a request, we've all received the emails and we're able to review them, but it's the ability to do a sponsorship for our football, or it's not just football, for our Pat Catan Stadium locker rooms. And in exchange for that, we would be able to do the athletic boosters would be the entity that we are negotiating with. And then they would then have the sponsorship agreement. So you've all had a chance to review it, and what I'd like to know is if there's consensus that Dr. Ryba and Mr. Anagnostou can work with the athletic boosters to bring us a contract.
I have a question. What is the advantage to doing it this way as opposed to doing it directly with the district?
A few advantages. There's some, the district is a public entity. The boosters are a 501c3. So there is some tax advantage or potential tax advantage for the donors as they're lined up. Beyond that, it's just the way this one worked out.
Okay.
So
it's not-
I'm supportive of it. I don't have any big issues, but it is one of those things that had to be, or needs to be discussed by the board before we can, we don't want to put the apple before the cart and unravel anything.
I would also add that the boosters are paying for the cost of the project. And but the donor that they're giving the naming rights is gonna offset the cost, and they're fronting the money, and then over the period of time, with the agreement that they would be reimbursed back with the naming rights.
So it's like a pledge?
What's
Is it
that?
like a pledge agreement then?
It's very
Yes,
similar,
to-
yes, it's
Yeah.
similar,
Similar to-
you know,
Yeah.
the donor is going to make some upfront money, but the
Boosters
people,
are gonna-
the people providing the locker room equipment aren't going to wait
Right.
for it. So to some degree, it's just ability to spread payments out, things like that. The boosters are going to commit to all of the money for the lockers. Again, we have very talented people in our maintenance department, so the install would be done by our own maintenance department, et cetera. And all in all, I don't see any reason not to empower our two to negotiate the contract. Like all contracts, the devil is in the details, and we'll have to get through those details, but before, I'm not able to just say, Cameron, George, go do it. So that's why it's a discussion item. And then we would bring back an actual contract that the board would agree to.
I have no problem, I mean, I don't have any problem with it. Thank you to the donor. I think it's very generous, so.
And I don't know if you've had a chance to see the pictures of what they did inside the high school. I mean, it looks amazing.
Mhm.
And so those locker rooms outside definitely need a touch-up.
Yeah.
In comparison, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for it to be able to, accommodate the football, lacrosse, track, I mean, that's half of the numbers that we saw today of athletes that'll get to use these locker rooms.
Yeah, we call it the football lockers, but it's good to remember that it's football, lacrosse, and, I'm brain hiccuping.
Track.
Track all use those locker rooms, so it'll
And
be,
cross-country even does for their invitational,
Yeah.
so.
it'll be a benefit to everyone. So, Coach Trusnick, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, just if you don't mind. And I think it's more kudos to what the board has done, right, as Denny just explained with the whole budget and what you guys have done to give back to the athletic department to allow the boosters for everybody that's now on the boosters, now money's not being spent on jerseys and socks and baseballs and all this stuff that the coach, like the needs, that the last 2 years we have definitely seen a spike as far as, I mean, I've talked to Dawn and Maddie with the locker room, and I mean, they're astounded. They took the kids in there this week and they were shocked with what it looks like now. So now it allows the boosters to go out and find donations and find their own money and do this and do the things to bring, again, in what I think Strongsville should be is first-class facilities. And that allows, not only because the boosters is doing their job, but you guys have allowed the boosters to do that by taking things, we don't have to pay for jerseys and stuff like that. So I think, a working hand between the athletic department, you guys, and the boosters has been phenomenal. So appreciate it across the board.
If there's no other questions, I think you two have your direction, and thank you. Next on our agenda is our levy renewal discussion. So as everyone knows, we do have a levy that is currently on the books and is collected. If it is not renewed or voted on by the end of this year, though the levy amounts will no longer be collected by the county after this year. So the board has a decision to make with regards to what to do on the November election, and this is the first opportunity as a board that we have to have this discussion in a serious and rigorous fashion. So George has a presentation to kind of start our conversation, and then we as a board can continue it.
Thank you, Mr. Miko. As Mr. Miko said, I've put some slides together just to kind of facilitate the conversation. As he said, this is the renewal levy that we have had on the ballot the last 2 times that hasn't been successful. November, we have our last opportunity to to put it back on. If it does not pass, then $9.9 million of revenue will be lost at that point. Just to highlight what it is, the renewal levy is a 5.9 mil operating levy that was initially approved by the voters in May of 2019. With increased valuations, the residential effective rate is 5.12. Renewal of this operating levy will generate approximately $9.9 million per year for the district's operating fund. And a renewal levy is a continuation of a previously approved levy, meaning this is not a new this is not a tax increase. Last month, I presented a 5-year forecast to the board just to kind of highlight the May 5-year forecast. This year, our total revenues are forecast to be $90.3 million. Our expenditures $86.2 million, with a revenues over expenses of $4.1 million. And the next column in fiscal year '25, this is the first year that, if not approved, the levy would fall off. And the way we have to show the forecast on this slide is if the levy does not pass, or assume that the renewal is not included, and then add it back to the bottom. So if the renewal is not passed, we would lose half that money next fiscal year, which is roughly about $5 million or 4.8. So we would begin deficit spending by $6 million. Even if it was passed, we would start deficit spending by $1 to $2 million. And then, as you would see, if it is not passed and that trend continues, that deficit spend continues to increase, and we would be looking at a cash deficit in fiscal year '28. If it were to be approved, we would have a positive cash balance of $33.7 million that fiscal year. And also add that fiscal year '28, it's just not the current renewal levy that drops off. We also have another renewal levy. So half of that would be the first year that would come off as well. So that's why the renewal on the bottom is showing greater, at $14 million is the two levies combined. To kind of summarize with this graph that we've been using, if it were to be approved, as is in the green box, our cash balance in 2028 would be $35.7 million, with a deficit spend of around $6 million at that point in time. If it were not to be approved, our cash balance would be a deficit of 2.5, which legally we're not allowed to have a cash deficit, and with a deficit spend about $20 million. So that would be a large gap that we would have to start closing at some point to maintain fiscal stability. Last year, we did establish a cash balance policy, which has triggers for minimums and maximums of cash. One of the minimums is that we at least have 90 days operating cash for expenditures, which is about 3 months on hand. Looking at our lowest points on hand, or at the end of the fiscal year, when the renewal levy was initially passed, we had 166 days, and you see that spike, and then throughout the levy cycle, you see the decline. But throughout the 5-year forecast, assuming that the renewal is passed, we would be above that benchmark with fiscal year '28 with a 90 days, about 131 days cash on hand, which is above the 90 days. Timeline for the renewal levy, I'm just going to kind of work backwards. All of this graph is in chronological order, but working from the bottom up, the election filing date is August 7th, which I believe is a Wednesday, by 4:30. In order to file it by August 7th, we would need 2 resolutions to be approved. The first resolution aiming at the June 27th or July 9th meeting, which is the resolution of necessity. We would have that certified by the county auditor's office, which they would just certify the amount that the levy would generate. And then the second resolution would be to officially accept that certification and direct me to file with the Board of Elections. And we could either, depending on when we do the first levy, we could either do that July 9th or August 1st meeting, which gives us ample time to file by August 7th. So the key is August 7th and working backwards from there. What have we done? We've had these slides before in our various community conversations, but what have we invested, since we got the $9.9 million, what have we invested back into the district? Academics, we have one-to-one technology, career exploration programs, expanded course offerings, our letters training, and moving forward our science and reading trainings that we'll be doing the next couple of years. Maker spaces in all buildings throughout the district. We maintained our average class sizes at all grade levels throughout the district. We had additional staff, English ELL teachers, an elementary assistant principal, elementary curriculum supervisor, elementary reading specialists, the gifted coordinator, literacy coaches and instructional integration, MTSS coordinator, RTI intervention specialist, secondary math coach, and special education. Although these started as ESSER funds, these positions are coming onto the general fund next year, so we're continuing to invest in those positions. And then also, as what was approved tonight, a new principal for the preschool as well. So that's an additional position that we haven't had. Investing in athletic and arts, as Denny just presented earlier, throughout the year we have increased the athletic budget, but also we've had Mr. Kepler as an assistant athletic director for the middle school, the athletic budget for both middle school and high school. We've added coaching levels for the high school and offered new athletic opportunities, such as the dance team and spirit squad and an esports arena. And then same with the middle school. We added additional teams with cheerleading squads and additional teams for volleyball, girls and boys basketball. And then additional supplementals for band and orchestra, secondary music extracurricular, and secondary theater extracurriculars, music funding instrument replacement, a recording lab, and reorganization of the middle school schedule for our classes. And then lastly, investing in our students. We expanded extracurricular opportunities. For the elementaries, we added 3 additional extracurricular opportunities. Strongsville Middle School, the intramurals, and then also the clubs that we've added for non-athletic extracurriculars, the Dungeons and Dragons, Power of the Pen, Builders Club, and Math Magicians Club. And then the high school, the non-athletic extracurriculars that we've added there as well for mock trial, National History Day Club, National English Honor Society, Academic Challenge, National Art Society, Moy Alpha Theta, Honor Society, Jazz Band, and Chamber Springs. And then expanded our counseling programs with mental health supports, mental health service providers, school safety with our SROs, and then in addition to the camera systems, the Envoy visitor management system, the secure vestibules, window film, the Bolo sticks, and training and resources for annual threat and stop the bleed kits throughout the district. If the funds were to continue, we can continue to explore other opportunities to invest in the dollars back into students. We can look at eliminating full-day kindergarten tuition, eliminate student fees for consumable supplies, pay to plane trainer fees, or any other items that may arise for either opportunities or additional staff that, as they've been arising now, we've been able to, with our financial position, we've been able to address any needs that arise throughout the year. Any questions on that before I move on to the next few slides? No. The next slides, I kind of just had a couple scenarios of our cash situation based on a full levy, half levy, or the non-renewal of the levy. Just kind of looking at the fiscal year 20. So each graph, we have the green for the full levy, the yellow for the half levy, and the red for the non-renewal. So each year, as we begin to deficit spend, our cash balance will continue to decline as we're spending more dollars than we're bringing in. If the levy is renewed at full, in fiscal year 2028, we would have $35.7 million in cash, which would be about 131 cash days. For a half renewal, it'd be about 18.5 million at 68 days, cash days, which is below our 90-day minimum. And then if it's non-renewed, we would have 1.6 million with 6 days of cash days. And that's just looking at June 30th. Throughout the year, we do have some lows in January and February, which we may need to borrow cash in order for cash flow, if it was in that situation. And then this next graph kind of looks at revenues over under expenditures as, again, deficit spending. For this fiscal year, we would be about, we'd be positive, we would have a surplus for fiscal year '24. We're kind of trending around 4 to 5 million. For fiscal year '25, it would slightly be, if the levy was renewed, it would be slightly a deficit spend, or depending on how we manage our expenses, could be a slight surplus on how those numbers swing. But the half levy and the full levy would start deficit spending, and then as we get into fiscal year '28, you can see how each one increases the deficit spend, and the larger that deficit spend is, the harder it is to close the gap, because you might be looking at a combination of either new money or drastic cuts, or one or the other. So those two have to balance out and offset. Just looking at a couple options for the renewal levy, or a few options, I should say. Renew the levy as is, no change, the standard 5-year renewal. Renew as a continuous levy, as we've seen in the previous graph, or not, renew as a continuous levy. As we've seen in the previous graphs, as we continue to deficit spend, the need for the levy will remain the same in the future, and the cost for renewal to the Board of Elections, it costs us about $30,000 to $40,000 per election. And then also for financial stability, as well as we know those dollars will be there moving forward, or we could replace at a different amount with a renewal or a continuous. And then other future considerations, as I kind of touched on earlier, we have that 2002 renewal levy. That's when it was first passed. It was last renewed in November of '21, which was a 5-year, $6 million levy with a collection beginning in January of '23. The forecast assumes that the levy will expire in tax year December 31st, 2026, and collections will run through December 31, 2027, which is fiscal year '28 for us. And the first year it could be back on the ballot is November of '26. So that would be in 2 years. And then, as I said, in all 3 scenarios that were projected to start deficit spending, and all 3 scenarios listed in the previous slides. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board for discussion on kind of direction on which way we want to proceed.
Anybody have any burning questions they want to start with? So I will start. I think it's incumbent on us as a board. We recognize that we've done this renewal, we've attempted to get this renewal passed twice. It has failed 2 times. So I do think it is incumbent on us as a board and as a district to think through our next actions rigorously and deeply and come up with a decision. But I don't see a whole lot of the factors that led this board to make its decisions the first time. I don't see that the decision that we made the second time, I don't see a whole lot of factors that have changed. There is organized opposition. There has been organized opposition to renewal of this levy. So addressing that, I would assume that if we would just do another renewal, rinse, wash, and repeat, there would be organized opposition to it again. I disagree with that thought process. One of the things that I look at is we are in the best financial condition that the school district has been in my memory, in my in my paying attention, which is probably close to 20 years now. And on the one hand, that would make one think that the idea that we have too much money, maybe there's some merit to that. On the other hand, it means we're doing what we should have been doing all along for the past 20 years. And now the decisions that the board and the administration makes aren't decisions of expediency. I've said it before, budgeting with no money is really easy. We should buy this, we don't have the money, we're not buying it. Now, we do have the money, and the challenge for this board and administration is not to assume that everything has merit and we should just buy everything or spend money on everything, regardless of whether it's wise or not. It's the board's challenge to plan for the district today, tomorrow, and the next 30 years. The people that are looking at this levy, they're looking at one individual decision. They're looking at yay or nay on that individual decision. And I think that makes it difficult for us to take one decision and say, for the board, we're asking for the community's support on this one decision because we're looking at a 20-year decision. But the facts are, yes, the organized opposition has said, we could do a half levy, we could do a no levy, we could not renew it, and for the next year, maybe two, we could continue along. But the reality of it is if we're collecting approximately $10 million a year, and we stop collecting that for a number of years, when it's time to readjust our finances, that readjustment becomes that much larger. It's either $10 a year for 5 years, or it's $50 in year 5, but we get to the same conclusion. But the reality of it is just like your retirement, just like any other expense, it is much easier to budget it. So on that idea, as many of you know, I should start my own clipping service, but just so that we can frame the discussion of what Strongsville is considering compared to all the other school districts and all the other entities in Cuyahoga County and Ohio they're considering. Akron School Board just recently, because we're all in that same cycle where we have to get ready for the November election, placed an operating levy and bond issue on the November ballot in order to build a new $85 million North High School, as well as cover daily expenses. And that $85 million levy for Akron translates to a $7.6 million operating levy and a $1.3 million bond issue. A news release from the school district states that the levy represents a cost of $266 and $45 for the bond per 100,000. That's an increase. That is a new money request. It is not a renewal. Cleveland is going on the ballot. To put a property tax increase before city voters to help close a budget shortfall. The 8.6 mil school levy would increase property taxes by $301 annually per $100,000. As part of the same ballot issue, the district will seek the issuance of $295 million in bonds to maintain school buildings. So that's Akron and Cleveland. Those are urban districts. They're not suburban districts.
Didn't Akron, did they not get their levy passed like last year or something?
I believe so.
So
Cleveland passed a new money levy 2 years ago because of the way ESSER works and because of budgeting and lots of issues with urban school districts. The new money levy that they passed 2 years ago, they're looking at an additional new money levy. I don't purport as an individual board member to be able to solve urban school district problems. I like working on suburban school district problems. And in fact, I only like working on one suburban school district, and that would be Strongsville. But, and George and I were talking about this earlier. There's a district in the Cincinnati area, Mount Healthy. They have not been able to pass a levy for a number of years. They have had to lay off over 70 teachers. They're looking at a $1.5 million levy proposal. They originally were looking for a $3 million per year, but the board decided the amount was too great for that school district. That's not the, for those of us who know who Paul Harvey is, that's not the whole story. They are in Keith Faber just recently declared them in fiscal emergency because of their operating fund deficit, which are the things that our 5-year forecasts predicts in less than 3 or 4 years. What that means is the state comes in and helps you right your ship by giving you a loan to pay your bills, and then you go and try to get a levy, and not to just make sure you're financially sound, but to pay back that loan. And just like anything else, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, the snowball gets bigger faster as it gets down the hill, and it's that much harder to right that ship. And those of us who have been in the district for 20 years remember how much work it took to right that ship, and we are now there. But Cincinnati school districts are really far away. So the one that we should be aware of is Medina, and they are looking to consolidate. They're looking at cutting. They're looking at consolidating. I feel they're looking at what we were not that many years ago. Their student population is declining because their parent population is getting older, and we were in that very same dynamic not that many years ago. They have an emergency levy on the books for November. Again, Medina is, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of similar characteristics. Their levy passed or failed the same way our levy failed. This is a new money levy, and it is, again, a board has to decide, are we going to try to just get a approval of a new money levy, or in this case, Medina is looking at cuts and a combination of cuts and new money, and it becomes very difficult. And the decisions, put candidly, are no fun. So that's kind of just from a school board perspective. The last thing I wanted to share with my fellow board members and the public at large are some of the headwinds that are coming out. And what I mean by that is there's been a number of news articles talking about sales tax collection rates in Ohio and how they have been continuing to not come in as projected, and not just a little bit, large amounts where the state is expressing concern. They're not expressing concern about tomorrow. They're not expressing concern about next year. They're expressing concern about the next year's biennium budget. And so that 2-year budget affects our school district greatly. It affects all school districts greatly. And they're already talking about how sales tax, which is one of their largest tax revenue sources, is nowhere near what it's been projected. And so what does that mean for the state? What it means for the state is looking at that fair funding formula and questioning whether they're going to maintain that commitment. That's a serious concern for me. It should be a serious concern for the entire board. The state has a rainy day fund, but that rainy day fund is one-time money. And we've had criticisms in the past about what we do with one-time money, and can we fix our financial problem with using one-time money? And the response from me as a board member is one-time money is a one-time fix. It's not a long-term fix. So yeah, we could get out of a fiscal problem for 1 year, but as George has talked about, the gap continues to increase. It becomes harder and harder. And so yes, it might be easy to write a check and fix that problem, but it means we're ignoring other problems. In this case, our facilities, where I think made a wise decision to say we're going to commit dollars to those capital projects. But if we would suddenly say, hey, we're gonna move that money back to the general fund, it's a one-time fix. It's not a permanent fix, which is just a long roundabout way to bring us back to, is it what is wise for the school district, for the board to decide to do with the renewal. I think the other thing that we have to consider is whether this is a levy that we continue to put up for 5 years or not. I've always been comfortable that we can earn the taxpayers' trust. But at the same time, recent history tells me to renew this levy, assuming it passes, close to $100,000 will have been spent just on administrative fees. And I would much rather spend $100,000 on education. And then the last thing I made this note, and it was in response to George's slides about what we've been doing with the money. We have not been investing in the status quo. We have been investing in strategically growing our school district in the direction we want it to grow. Not for me, not for Dr. Ryba or George or Jenny, but for our students, for the children in our community. And a continued failure of the levy is a way of saying what we want to invest in is the status quo. Because that's where we would, our decisions would lead, whether it be cuts, whether it be no more new programs, et cetera. But if you look at the targeted investments we've made, I'm proud of the fact that none of them were just, hey, we have money, let's spend it. They were all directed, they all had goals, they all addressed the needs for our students. So I do think the board has important decisions to make. We've talked about the timeline. Before we talk about next steps, does anybody else have any soapbox they want to get on? Or is my soapbox enough?
I think you covered everything, Rich.
So, George, can you bring up the slide on some of our options? There we go. So I do think we need to have some serious consideration as a board on whether we rinse, wash, and repeat and just do a renewal levy as is, no change, 5-year renewal. The thing that I, as an individual board member, will think heavily about is the fact that we are in a cycle of every 2 to 3 years, we need to do this. And it is tiring. I have no problem explaining to anyone our finances. I have no problem explaining to anyone the good things we're doing. But to have to deal with that every 2 to 5 years is difficult for me to consider. So I think that's one thing we need to consider, is whether it's a renewal levy or whether we renew it as a continuous levy, recognizing that we're going to have this conversation again in 2 years.
If we renew it as a continuous levy, can you explain that? Because I'm confused.
Sure. Continuous levy means that if it is passed, it is passed in perpetuity.
So it never goes
It does
away.
not expire. Now, that doesn't mean that the school board has to collect it. The school board, as we all know, every year, we have to go to the county and say, this is what we want to collect. And so a future school board, if somehow the state decided that, for example, we were going to get $6,000 per student, we would be in a position of having to say, I don't, with that amount of money, we could reduce levies. I don't imagine that situation ever coming up, but if it did, I want the public to know a continuing levy is not like, oh my gosh, you're paying it forever. The board can choose to let levies lapse, but what a continuing levy means is that we don't have a regular cycle. We don't do this discussion where we have three opportunities to pass this renewal, and if it doesn't pass, it comes off the books.
Right.
It stays on the books.
But that still has to pass, and
That has to pass before it can happen.
George, do we have any current continuous levies that we're collecting on?
All but
Yeah, we
two.
have.
How can you delineate those for us?
Give me a second, I'll
Yeah.
pull them up. I have them in the tax budget.
Thank you.
That's what I was gonna ask, like, when was the last time we passed a continuous levy?
Would we reduce it if it was a continuous levy?
There's our conversation.
Well,
Just
that's
as George is looking, 86, 1990, 1994, 1999, those are all continuous, and we have this from the 80s. And then the last few, the 2002, and then there's a 2007, which, let's see. So the 2002 is, the 2007 must have been a continuous as well. And then the 2002 and the 2019 are the
Are
two
the-
5-year limited.
So this is from the tax budget that was presented in January, just as for context.
Thank you.
So these are all of our operating levies up top. So we have the inside millage. We have, these were just previous levies that were just all grouped together. This is around when House Bill 920 came in place. So these were all the levies that were in 1976. The maximum rate was 31.8 million at the time. The effective rate currently is 4.71. In 78, we passed a 6.7 continuous levy. Currently, that effective rate is, for residential, is 1.57. In 86, a continuous levy was passed at 9.7 mils, and the effective rate for residential is 3.79. In 1990, a continuous levy was passed at 6.98. The effective rate is 3.15. In 1999, a continuous levy was passed with a voted rate of 4.5. The current effective rate is 2.43. And then the original 2002 levy that was passed at that time for 6 mils, the current effective rate is 4.31. Then in 2007, we had a continuous levy that was at 6.5. The current effective rate is 4.99. And then the last levy that was passed was the 2019. So from 2007 to 2019, that was the last time we passed new operating funds. So essentially, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 continuing, and then 2 renewals.
And for comparison, most of the districts around us, most of the suburban districts around us, do not have renewing levies. They're passed as continuing levies. And so on the one hand, if I'm a taxpayer, a renewal levy has an attraction in the sense that it lets me make sure that the school district is doing a good job. It lets me, as a voter, have the school district stand and deliver. On the other hand, Strongsville has been doing that, and I think they've been doing it very well in the last 5 to 10 years. I think the fact that the levy originally passed is indication of that. And so I am conflicted. On the one hand, I'm comfortable saying we'll earn it. On the other hand, we're spending $100,000 a year. And it's not $100,000 of my money. It's not $100,000 of anyone's money. It's $100,000 of the taxpayers' money. And so I am seriously considering whether that is a wise way to go, and whether going to the voter and saying, we have 2, you're going to have an opportunity to say yes or no. Is the school district worth investing in? Is it worth investing in at a regular rate instead of having a seesaw like other districts are having, where it's maintain, new levy, new money, because we're not, for a number of reasons, but not being good financial stewards? Or is the conversation, this next one is your chance and we're going to earn it, but we want to convert that to a continuous levy, recognizing that the community gets its opportunity to determine in less than 2 years, do we continue to have their trust? Are we continuing to do a good job? So I am personally grappling with is the second renewal sufficient that we have a feedback loop with the taxpayer and we can stop spending money, sending it to the county to just run elections?
How much money have we brought in the past year for full-day kindergarten and pay-to-play?
So full-day kindergarten, the money that we bring in tuition is about, it's either 450 or 540. Give me 1 second.
It's 550 on the sheet.
550,
George.
okay. It's about 550,000 that we collect in tuition. And pay-to-play is about 225, 240, somewhere in that range.
So we're getting close to being able to have been able to pay all that stuff for people so they wouldn't have to do it if we didn't have to keep filing this. So every time the 100,000 could be going towards that.
No, well, yeah, it's
Or
30,000.
lessening, yeah.
About 30 to 40,000 an election.
Yeah.
And so, but that's a good point that you brought up, Haley. There are things that we have discussed are in the best interest of our students, and I would argue are in the best interest of our community, that for pragmatic financial reasons, we've never been able to do before. Pay to participate was done for a pragmatic financial reason, to fill holes, to make cuts less, to keep programs going that otherwise the school board would say, we're not just doing the status quo, we're going backwards, right? So they were Hobson's choices. Full-day kindergarten, I know I don't even have to ask Cameron to get people to line up to say that there's an educational value for full-day kindergarten.
And a want for it.
We have our own regular visitor to our school board who speaks very passionately about full-day kindergarten and the burden it is on parents to, for some parents, to pay that extra fee for full-day kindergarten. If the levy is not renewed, the board is going to be in no position to even have the conversation. Now, the nuance for the board, again, the voter, the people who are opposed are just focused on one decision. The board's focused on, well, we're growing. Full-day kindergarten, we don't even have enough room for all of our students. We're getting mobile units. So those are the kinds of conversations that the board and the district have to have that are much larger and more in the lines of what are we going to do, what decisions do we make today that affect the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 25 years. And so it feels like we have the same conversations over and over again. We have, how many million do we have in our 070 fund? 25 million?
25 million.
25 and whatever was earned.
And the plus interest.
Yeah, so it's about 20.
Because we're not keeping the interest for ourselves, it stays in the fund. But that money is earmarked for all of those facility needs, because we're growing, because we have the problem of looking forward many more little Mustangs coming to our schools. And that's a good problem to have, but it's also something that we have to plan for and consider versus just looking at yes or no on one levy.
How much is all-day kindergarten a year per person?
Per person, it was 2,200
So
for
it's
this year.
cheaper to pass the levy for someone who's sending their child to full-day kindergarten than to pay the tuition.
That's true. But that's a small group of people.
It could be a larger group if we had room for it.
So again, why don't we bring up the timeline, George?
Yeah.
So the critical deadline is August 7th. It's also important, I think, for the public to have the opportunity, if they so wish, to talk about all of these issues with their individual board members. And so what I would propose is if we work backwards, we need to have 2 resolutions. We have the August 1st meeting which would be the second resolution. We have the July 9th meeting, which would be the first resolution. And then at the June 27th meeting, we would finish this discussion and let George and the public know what we want to have them vote on. Whether we want them to have, whether we just want to renew the existing levy, whether we want to convert it to permanent, whether we want to replace it with a different amount levy, all the different options that we've outlined before. This gives approximately 2 weeks for the board to consider it. It gives approximately 2 weeks for the public to communicate to the board, and then we can come back June 27th and come to consensus on what we want to do July 9th. That's what, if that resonates with the board, that's what I'm recommending. Are there any other questions or concerns? Any other issues for us to discuss? Okay, we will put on the agenda for the June 27th meeting this topic again. Our goal will be to build consensus on what we want on the July 9th agenda as far as a levy is concerned. Thank you.
Thanks. And then.
Dr.
Go ahead.
Dr. Ryba, you're up.
All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Jenny here in a second to share some updates, but just as a reminder, a couple of years ago, we had a new contract with the teachers. A part of that contract was to revamp our supplemental contracts. We hadn't done that like in 20 years. So Jenny led a committee and did some great work, and George, as he shared his presentation, a lot of those new clubs and extracurriculars and activities and experiences for our kids came from those updated supplemental contracts. A part of the negotiated agreement was that we would keep, so we didn't have to go another 20 years. We had a mechanism in the contract that said we were going to have a supplemental committee, supplemental contract committee. We would meet on an annual basis, and that committee would provide recommendations to the board. So Jenny leads this committee, so I'm going to turn it over to her to share an update on the work they've done this year.
So thank you. So just again, as a reminder, our goal is to keep our supplementals current and making sure that we're reviewing them each year. And so the committee met. And with that, review, we also look at maybe things that are lacking in the district and things that are needed and things that maybe have been going on and we haven't had necessarily a supplemental in place. And so these were the three. We reviewed quite a few of them, but 3 are being recommended by the committee. A couple things that we consider are, obviously the need, how long have things already been going on in place without a supplemental, and then the participation rates of the students. So the first one is a drumline instructor for marching band. I think, as we reflected on in consultation with Andy Heyer, who is on the committee with us, this is one that he said, I kind of missed this one when we reviewed it initially. So Strongsville Instrumental Boosters have been paying for a drumline instructor for a while now. And the concern is really that if we don't secure somebody, it's really hard to find a drumline instructor that is willing to come in and basically run practices with just the drumline solely. And, work with them all through the marching band season, and, go through camps with them and to try to find a qualified person with this type of degree is a challenge. And so we feel that this is something that the district should take over. Right now, the boosters do pay about $3,000 for this person, so we're recommending that it would start at the 7% experience level, which is about $3,200. We would just need one person, and there's already one person doing it that's available. So we wanted to be able to try to secure that person for this coming school year. So that's that one, if there's any questions on that.
Does the dollar amount match the work, or does it match with the current funding?
I believe it matches the work. We compared it to the other performance art supplementals and the marching band and orchestra supplementals, so it's pretty equivalent to that, for sure, yeah. The next one is unified sports. So this has been going on at the high school. This is year 3. Middle school also started it. They're in year 2. But we're specifically recommending the high school only at this time for the supplemental. And really, the reason for the supplemental is most of the time the kids and the coaches go during the school day. So it takes place primarily during the school day. Their events happen during the school day. However, the high school has begun doing practices after school with students so that they can prepare for their performances in their sports. And so they're looking at maybe 15 to 20 practices per year. There's about I think they have up to 45 students who are now participating in this program. And again, it's not only students with disabilities, but it's also their same age peers working with them. It's a wonderful program. Our staff has really taken this on for the last few years, just all on their own. And so the supplemental is for the practices. There's 2. There would be 2 supplementals because there's 2 advisors. And we feel with just a few practices after school throughout the year that experience level would be starting at 2%. We feel that's fair for the amount of work that they do. At this time, we're not recommending middle school. They aren't practicing yet during, after school. They haven't been doing that. So if they start to do that or continue to do that, we'll reevaluate next year for that one. Finally, we have Rho Kappa Social Studies Honor Society. By recommending this one, this makes it equitable with the other honor societies that we've approved in the past, you've approved in the past. This has been around for many years, 10 years. I think it's been in place where we have volunteers doing it. We have about 40 to 50 members in this society for social studies, and so we're recommending 1 supplemental for this for the high school, with those experience levels starting at 2%. So those are our recommendations for your consideration.
So how this works is these are positions that would be on a future board agenda. So as a reminder for supplementals, this would be a discussion. If we have consensus on which ones that you would be supportive of, we would move forward and post those and fill those for next year. Your official approval would be when these positions are on the board agenda. So I'll turn over to you, Mr. Micko, to discuss and give us guidance.
I have a question.
I have a question. Who goes first?
Me.
Ladies first.
Jenny, so you meet every year at this committee, and this would cover every level, high school, middle school, elementary. Are the vast majority of the contracts you talk about at the high school level? Is that how it falls?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our supplementals are at the high school level and middle school level. If you recall, the elementaries have 5 supplementals that they can, disperse at how they want, but most of them do come from, the high school needs and the middle school needs.
Okay, I was just noticing these are all high school,
Correct.
so that was
No,
just an
I understand.
observation.
Yeah.
I wondered about the distribution.
Yeah.
And just as a reminder, the way we formulate a lot of the elementary and middle school is here's how many you get. We want them to focus on different areas, but you get to pick what those are, where the high school are more specific to here's exactly what this supplemental contract is for.
Thank you.
As far as the mechanics, how do you determine, you have Rho Kappa, which is 40 to 50 students, 1 person at $917. Then you have 2 unified sports, and I think you said there's 20?
45.
45.
Yeah.
So, but there's 2. So I'm just
Correct.
curious on the mechanics of how we determine how many and
Yeah.
workload.
I think, with the unified sports, with the practices, you've got students moving around. They're doing athletic kinds of things. So, in comparison to when we have sports, who have multiple coaches observing and for the safety of everybody, there's also a lot of planning that goes into the unified sports and organizing as they they travel, there's transportation, there's a lot that goes into that. So hence the need for 2 people. Whereas Rho Kappa, they're meeting after school primarily. I do believe they have a ceremony. So again.
So is there mechanics for hours, approximate hours you're going, whoever gets the supplemental is going to put in? Or how are we doing that?
Yeah, so for unified sports, they were looking at 15 to 20 practices, about an hour after
Okay.
school each time. meetings ROCAPA has, but I know that was, I don't think I have that here. So I know we discussed that, but I can't remember exactly how many meetings they have per year, but it might be once a month or something like that, so.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's also equivalent to the other honor societies that you've already approved. So.
If we pass the levy, we won't even really have to think about this, it would be given.
We still have to think about it.
I mean,
'cause-
not, you know what I mean?
Yes, but, no, but I think your comment is important. I mean, regardless of whether the levy passes or not, it's our job to make sure that whatever we're doing, supplementals, regular salaries or whatever, that we're getting value for the community, right?
Yeah, these are all beneficial things and very important. I know like the Unified Sports, for example, I think you've been to some of the events that they've had.
Oh,
They
yeah,
have,
they're
like,
great.
It's amazing, and it brings all different communities together and creates
Brings the kids
partnerships and
together.
friendships and things that otherwise wouldn't exist.
Yeah, I've had a child participate in Unified Sports, and I've had a child who was a ROCAPA member, and it's all great stuff.
Did you have a child who was both?
No, they were different children.
Does
I would-
anyone?
I was just going to say, to the drumline instructor, that one feels a lot to me like what Jason just talked about, in that we took a lot of the necessity, the socks, I think he said, the socks and the, helmets or whatever, back into our budget so that the supportive organization could do other things. This feels like the equitable move for SIM, and I don't see how we could say, no, the athletics can have it, but the music program cannot.
I agree with that.
I don't hear any opposition to any of it, so we look forward to seeing the contracts, and then we can decide whether we want to pass them.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
As you talked about, Mr. Miko, this is all about investing in our kids and providing better opportunities, whether it's through sports or music or academics, so we appreciate that. The second item under my topic is instructional coach stipend. So if you remember when we had a discussion about the master staffing plan, one of the recommendations to add next year was 25 instructional coaches. That was rebranding and refocusing our TBT coaches and our tech coaches. And so that was approved by the board, and we have 25 stipends for that next year. Those 25 are divided by all the buildings based on their size. As Jenny and I were reviewing that, we realized we forgot one at the preschool. And it was important to have one of them at the preschool. So we would like your consideration to go beyond the 25 and give us permission to have 27 $2,000 stipends. So it's a $4,000 ask. One of them is for the preschool. We believe for equity, the preschool should have one in their building as well. So this would be for the Lund Road preschool. We have two, I think, at Chapman that would service the preschool classes at Chapman as well. The second one is, Sharon and Haley, you would know from the work we've done with our Business Advisory Council. So we've done a lot of work with our Business Advisory Council. We've worked with them on bringing something back called the Senior Project. We started it this year. It was like a small rollout. So the Senior Project is, I'm a senior. I can use the last month of my school year to explore a career field, a topic of interest. I could do a project on it, present it to an authentic audience, and kind of learn where my interests may be. So we're going to continue to build that next year. And, I've shared with the board in past updates all the details that go into that, as well as expand that so there's a pathway in every grade level that ultimately builds to the senior project. So starting next year, there will be a class that all freshmen take, and there'll be career pathway experiences in those classes, and then it goes in sophomore year, junior year, all building the skills that will create students that will be ready for their senior project the last year. So it's about continuing to integrate career exploration opportunities and those career skills in there. And so we would still qualify this person as an instructional coach and the same stipend, but that would be, this person would just solely focus on the career pathway, the senior project, and be the coordinator of that work for 9 to 12. So those are the two additional stipends that I'm requesting.
When you said starting next year, are you talking 24-25 or 25-26?
24-25.
Thank you.
So the teacher that's been working with us is on the Business Advisory Council. She's a high school teacher, and and there's other teachers that are helping to support, but I met with her before the school year was out, and she's got a very detailed plan to get everything up and going for next school year, 24-25.
Is anyone totally against it?
No, it's great.
All right, thank you.
It really
You
is.
can
The
bring
kids
you can bring that
love it.
contract to the next meeting. and
They'll be on there.
Stipend,
They'll be on there.
stipend.
We'll decide whether we want to pass it or not.
No, it's exciting, you know,
The
and,
kids really love, I mean,
yeah,
they really love, like, it's nice to see them, like, kind of advance and.
yeah.
It's difficult to get people excited at 7:30 in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
And like, literally everyone is, they all participate in conversation, whether it's the kids, whether it's the business partners, so.
Yeah, it's good, it's a nice program.
It is. So thank you for that. And my network connection just died, so
I think all of
let's see if my LASIK is still working well. George, if you want to click on that one.
Yeah, it
So
is.
we do have a couple items. We don't have anything under business services for tonight, but we do have a couple items under curriculum. So be it resolved, I think I'm doing pretty good so far. Thank
For you.
Yeah. Yeah. So be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that permission be granted to the Strongsville High School boys varsity and junior varsity basketball teams to attend overnight camp at the University of Findlay, June 27th to 28th. Transportation will be via school bus, lodging and meals will be paid for by participating students. And secondly, we've got another overnight trip. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that permission be granted to the boys and girls track and field team to travel to Dayton, Ohio to participate in the state track and field championship that took place May 31st to June 1st. Transportation was provided via school bus. Lodging and meals were paid by Strongsville Athletic Boosters. And just as a point of reference, the board has to approve all overnight trips because of things like this, like state competitions that falls in between meetings. So I have the authority to say, to give permission, but ultimately you have to approve it even if it's after the fact.
I was curious to see what would happen if we did not approve it. Make them go back and
That's
drive
right,
backwards.
yeah. All right.
Lose then.
No student services items for the work session, and then I'll turn it over to Jenny for the human resource report.
All right, thank you. I have the following items for your consideration. Under number 1, we have abolishments for sign language interpreters, and this is due to a lack of students. The students are no longer either have the need or have graduated, so that is the reason for those. Resignation of an administrative contract. Under 3, resignations for certificated staff. 4, resignation for certificated athletic supplemental contract. Under 5, resignation for non-certificated athletic supplemental contract. Under 6, we have the appointments for the administrative staff that you met this evening. 7, appointments for certificated staff. Under 8, appointments for non-certificated staff. Number 9 are appointments for certificated substitutes. 10, appointments for non-certificated substitutes. 11, we have appointments for certificated athletic supplemental contracts. 12, appointments for non-certificated athletic supplemental contracts. Appointment for home instruction tutor. Under 14, we have our appointments for our extended school year. 15, appointments for summer learning clerk. Under 16, appointments for our summer learning transportation bus drivers. Under 17, appointments for Kids Link summer program. Under 18, appointments for certificated supplemental contracts. This is additional time for our counselors and school psychologists and transition coordinator and MTS coordinator. Under 19, appointments for certificated supplemental contracts. Under 20, we have changes in hours for non-certificated staff. Under 21, contract recommendations for non-certificated staff. Under 22, we have 1 experience upgrade. Under 23, 1 unpaid leave for certificated staff. And finally, under 24, we have more people that want to come and volunteer for us, so we thank them. And that concludes my report.
Jenny, as you were going through it, I noticed something. I was just wondering if it needs corrected so we don't come back at another meeting. For number 6, the appointment of administrative staff, for the preschool principal, it says replacement for Megan Sir, so her position's not changing. She's just going different responsibility. So would it be a new position?
It's a,
'Cause
it's
we're
a
not-
different title, so that, the line where Megan is on is special ed coordinator / preschool director.
Mhm.
So she is replacing the portion of her role there.
Okay.
So you tell me what,
So would Megan come back as a,
so Megan would come back as a special education coordinator.
would you add her on?
She will be on a July meeting date.
Okay, don't
Does
worry
that
about
work?
it. Yep.
Okay.
If anyone had any doubts, if George looks at things with a fine-tooth comb.
I
There's
just
your
don't want,
answer.
I just don't want to come back at another meeting
Yeah,
with a
right.
correction.
With a change. You're good at what you do.
I mean, one of these days, we're going to say no.
Okay, and I'd like to ask Dave to come up to the podium to share the technology report for the month.
Poor David's been sitting there.
It's like,
I
we go out of
can't
order.
see anybody. I thought everyone was gone.
Well, there's two of us back here, so keeping each other company. So, good evening. Tonight I have two items. Put them in the correct order. So my first item is for BPI Information Systems and Managed Backup Services. This is to be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education enters a one-year agreement with BPI Information Systems to provide managed backup services for the 16 district servers at the cost of $2,545 per month for 12 months at the annual cost of $30,540. And item number two, I've never done one of these before, so George, correct me if I'm doing it wrong.
Dave,
Yeah.
before you get any further, so you said it's a one-year contract for the backup,
Correct.
but there's discussion of years 1, 2, and 3. Do we then approve the next contracts?
Correct. Right now, we're just approving the one-year agreement portion of it. Because every year, as long as I've been here, I remember has been a one-year deal because the number of servers can change, so therefore the amount can change as well. So for right now, we've just entered for a 1 year for the 16 servers.
For the record, the contract is dated 2013. So we'll want to correct that before we
Yes.
sign it. And
I
then
think we've been rolling over the same contract, is that what? So I will go back and have,
So, but regardless, I just wanted to compliment you and Jim. If anyone's watching the news, the city of Cleveland is discovering what happens when malware infects their entire network. And so having a good backup is not just a nice to have, it's absolutely essential.
and they help us with both our on-prem premises backups and also our off-premises backups. All right, number two is a correction to agenda item from May 23rd, 2024 for the superintendent report on technology. It originally read Southeast Security Classroom Technology Trailer Purchases. The vendor needs to be changed to Network Technology Innovations in or Amazon. The reason for this is Southeast Security and Network Technology Innovations are owned by Southeast Securities is a family business, and then one of the members of that family owns a branch off a company called the Network Technology Innovations. The attachment was correct, but when we went through and did the original reading, we put the wrong company in. So that's the need for the correction.
Any additional questions for Dave? Thank you, Dave, and that concludes my report.
Any questions for Dr. Ryba?
Is it always the same person that finds these errors that we have in our stuff, or is it individual departments that do?
That one was Dave's administrative assistant, Mary, and she asked me which was best to proceed.
Oh.
So I told her since it was, the resolution was passed as is, we would need to pass one to replace that. So,
We are at adoption of consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of consent calendar at this point of the agenda means that all items appearing in this agenda denoted as type action consent, which is the consent calendar, are adopted by one single motion unless requested otherwise. if I remember right, Haley, you wanted to vote separately on approving the past due.
No, I found
Bus
out we
trip?
have to do it anyway, so not anymore.
Are there any otherwise? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stelcheck?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion carries. Board of Education other, do we have any others? I do know that there is a sales tax holiday coming up, but I believe we will have a meeting before then. But just in case I'm wrong, you've been warned to look up the date for the sales tax holiday. And I do know I read something that they expanded some of the categories and there's more days for that sales tax holiday, which if you're buying new clothes and school supplies and everything else, 8% adds up. Any others? We do have need for executive session on the topics of,
To consider the employment of a public employee and to prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stelcheck?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion carries. We will enter into executive session at 9:10 PM. We have no expectation of further business. Have a nice evening and enjoy the summer.